Good afternoon and welcome to Just Jocelyn. This is part 2 with my fabulous guest, Al Brandano, always coming here with tons of information, able to break it down for us and have a great discussion and bringing important information and facts to the public, which is what we're not getting in the news. No. So they kind of have to rely on us. And specifically today, we want to talk about canceling Columbus Day. What's next? I saw you on YouTube, and I saw you going to, it was SAU.
Well, it's Kensington Elementary School, but it's part of SAU 16. 16.
And something that you observed driving by one day, and it got your juices flowing there, that you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And you went to the school board to discuss it with them. So tell us what happened.
Yeah, it was October 5th this year, and I was driving by the school, and on the school board that's in front on the public, on the street, and it said, teachers, some teachers event, and then it had a discussion in regards to it said Indigenous Peoples Day on one side, and then on the other side was the school teachers something.
In-service day or something, yeah.
And I thought that's kind of interesting. I didn't know that Indigenous Peoples Day was a holiday. And anyway, I assumed when I went on the other side of the sign, I would say Columbus Day, because that's really why they would be off on October 9th.
Correct.
Would be
a national
Columbus
holiday,
Day, a national holiday. But there wasn't one. There was nothing there. So, kind of got me a little bit. And my heritage is I'm Italian, if you can't figure that out. Just move my hands. But so I went, went about my business. And then it really bothered me. I went home and I called the school, the Kensington Elementary School, and the principal, Miss Wendy Brule, I hope I'm saying her name right, was very accommodating, very nice. We had a great conversation, and she kind of informed me that there is no Columbus Day on the official school calendar. SAU 16 eliminated Columbus Day, and they're going with Indigenous Peoples Day.
Oh.
And I said, I don't understand. First of all, Indigenous Peoples Day is not a holiday. And
right.
We had a little debate about that. Indigenous Peoples Day is a proclamation that Joe Biden did. And so it is, in essence, a proclamation. It's not a holiday.
Correct.
And that's the facts, right? So anyway, we went back and forth a little bit. And I said to her, gee, I would really appreciate it if you put Columbus Day on the other side. Can we have a resolution together?
Let's compromise.
Let's compromise. Can you add it? I'll feel better, and that'll be the end of it. And unfortunately, on October 9th, which is Columbus Day, I rode by, and they didn't change it. So, refused. I, with the help of J.D. Bernardi, which is my representative, my local rep, and Bill Gannon, who was my senator, William Gannon was my senator in Kensington, Kensington, with their support, especially JD, we went and made an appointment to go to the school board meeting, the Kensington Elementary School Board meeting, and we went and we had a discussion, and we told them that, how could they cancel Columbus Day? They have no, where's the authority?
Where's the authority? Yeah.
And we specifically pointed out in the RSAs, it's chapter 288, section 288.1, about holidays, and the second Monday in October is known as Columbus Day. That's a state law in New Hampshire. So whoever made this decision at SAU 16
went against state law.
Went against not only a state law, but it's a federal law. And remember that the town gets through the SAU federal and state funding
money.
Anyway, right? So you can't just cancel stuff because you don't like it. Of course, after that, we sent a letter, a 91A request to the SAU new superintendent, and we had a really wonderful discussion. I asked for information. I got some information back. It wasn't what I was looking for, and to her credit, we were able to meet. We met and in person, and we had a great discussion. And she informed me that 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 Columbus Day next year will be on the calendar.
Really?
Yeah, so it was
Good.
really a positive win. It was a positive experience. And my challenge to her was, how did we get here? How did this happen? How did it get taken off? Because I looked back at all the 91A stuff, all the minutes of the meetings, all the stuff that she had sent me. There has never been mention about Indigenous Peoples Day taking place over Columbus.
So they never really had a meeting or a discussion
No,
to say,
it
hey,
was
I think
done
we
by
want to.
the former superintendent.
Right.
Prior to leaving or at his discretion at some point, somebody wearing SAU 16 made this decision.
Yeah.
And it was really frightening to me because, no one really knows. Everyone, discredits Columbus, but, no one really knows how the holiday really came about. First of all, Columbus never set foot in the continental United States.
I have heard
So
that
for
recently.
someone who has never set foot here,
Yep.
gets such a bad rap. The second thing is in 1892, it was President Benjamin Harrison really makes Columbus Day happen. And the reason why it happened is because of a lynching in New Orleans. And remember, Columbus is 400 years ago, right?
Correct.
So in 1892, there was a lynching in New Orleans, and they hung 60 to 70 Italian immigrants. So this is really the beginning. People don't realize what the story is because we don't know history. This is the beginning why, President Harrison moves forward in that point, and he says, we're going to commemorate. And you got to remember, it was the Ku Klux Klan has been against, it was KKK, it was Christians, and then, if the word, I don't know if we can say it, kikes, and Christians, yeah. KKK. Anyway, it was a religion. They were against Catholics, Jewish people, and what was the other one? Anyway, it'll come to me in a second. But that's what it really stood for. It was horrible, right? And so these Italians were lynched, and people forget that this is really about, Columbus Day is about Christianity too. So by getting away with not talking about it and eliminating Columbus Day, what have we done?
You've eliminated
history, but we've eliminated the struggles of people.
Correct.
As well as Christianity.
Wow. That is absolutely mind-blowing. I really had no idea about that. I mean, we're all taught Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and we all assumed that was, because he came here and he never set foot on. So talk about really, destroying history and not teaching it for what it is.
Yeah, and
it's insane.
And I just remember it was blacks, Jewish people, and Christians. There's a hyphen word for it. I'm not going to use it, but on your show. But that's really where it came from.
Okay.
So imagine all this is going on, and people don't realize that this is
and then
about
they just
lynchings.
Cancel it, and we're going to call it Indigenous
and we're going to call
Day.
it why, right?
Yeah.
Why? And as my point is, I asked the SAO 16, could you identify what Indigenous people we're celebrating? Which ones? Or the ones that were here 5,000 years ago, 4,000? I don't know. Which one are we celebrating?
Right.
They didn't have a response.
No. It's just it's the correct terminology that excuse me.
But think about it for a minute. If it's not Columbus Day, what's to say that some superintendent somewhere says,
not going to change something else?
I'm going to do Independence Day. I don't like Independence Day. I'm going to change that too. So that's why, I didn't want to speak up. I mean, I have enough things I do, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
But I mean, at that point, this is once again the power of one. And fortunately, that there is a really brand new superintendent in SU 16 is doing a great job. And, people are starting to come together.
Well, the other thing that I've noticed in you telling me the story is that what did it come back to again? It came back to state and federal law.
Correct.
So, they love to throw emotions in there. They love to pound the table and you don't understand and this is fair and this is what the state law and this is what the federal law says. So unless you're changing those laws and changing the Constitution, you can't do that.
Right, but if we don't hold them accountable, this is back
which is
to
what
what
you
we were
did.
talking about before.
Yep.
it's saying to them, hey, you really can't, I'm going to have a debate about that. And look, we can be wrong, right? But we should, have that debate. We should talk about it. And we're hopefully adults that, it can be sound and reasonable arguments. And
Yeah.
the thing that saddened me the most was that they wouldn't just add it on October 9th and all this would have gone away.
Right.
But it ended
Just
up
put Columbus Day on the other side.
being a big battle, but an important battle. It had to be. I think it's important that we fight that battle because.
Well, we can't have our history erased.
Right, and think about the people who are doing it. These are the people in the schools, right? So what else do they? We have diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. As I said to them, where is my diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice
Correct.
as an Italian tradition, as a Columbus Day,
When you just
as a holiday, and the reason behind it. So, I do want to read something to you, if you don't mind, for just a second.
No, please do. We got lots of time.
This is really interesting. It says, this is from the Dartmouth Review, and I always try to use something that's on a little bit of the left and as well as the right. But in examining the historical Columbus, came to this conclusion. It is a mistake to conflate Columbus with the atrocities of colonialism and that succeeded his voyages. Columbus Day should be neither a moment of absolute praise or condemnation, but an opportunity to appreciate mutual discoveries between the Europeans and the Indians, learn from mistakes that were made, and celebrate moments of coexistence. That's from, Dartmouth Review is a very, a very, shall we say, left of center.
Left, yeah.
And then I find this quote really interesting. It's from Charles A. Griffin. He was a Portsmouth retired attorney, and he was on the school board in Portsmouth. And the quote comes from July 2022 on the Seacoast Online. So now a little bit on the other side. Those who have researched Columbus using unbiased historical documents and information do not bring a biased viewpoint. To this important debate. Those who have some sort of political bias grounded in Christian bigotry have a different outcome that would like to force upon schools and community. Pretty interesting. So, and his take on this was very interesting because Portsmouth did away. Portsmouth doesn't celebrate Columbus Day. The city of Portsmouth doesn't. They celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day because in a town, and not a town vote, but in a vote of the selectmen, or I don't think it's selectmen, they have something else.
Aldermen or something.
Aldermen, yeah. They voted
names.
to not do that,
and change the name.
And change it. So it's totally unconstitutional. I mean, you go, that's a beautiful thing. But here is this gentleman trying to identify, to say what we're doing. And when you look at the history of Columbus, there's some really interesting articles and books, but he ended up in a little bit of he had a tit for tat. Isabella, remember, she was choosing between the Italian and a Portuguese.
Correct.
To make this voyage. And Columbus's arch nemesis, I don't remember his name offhand right now, but it will come to me. And all the papers in history respond to him and how he was the critic of Columbus. So it's so interesting to go deep in to find out how, why these holidays came to be and why. And unfortunately, the schools aren't teaching it. That's what was so frustrating for me.
Well, not to have a grasp on it at all and just change the name because it's the flavor. I'm sorry, it's the flavor of the month, flavor of the year. We don't want to offend anybody. You just offended a whole ton of people because someone said Columbus was offensive or you didn't want to use that name. We needed to talk about, why don't you just make a whole new holiday? If you want to celebrate Indigenous people and then define who that is, then make a holiday for that, but don't take away one
but what happens
and change
is
it.
It's hard. That's one of the great things about the Constitution. To amend it is hard, right? They didn't want
they made it hard for a reason.
They made it hard because they didn't want knuckleheads
They didn't
doing it.
They didn't want emotions and drama to do it.
Right.
And as much as anybody says, well, this is really old, we're technologically advanced, pretty much everything in there stands for today.
Right.
It doesn't need to be revised and amended at this point. It really doesn't. Oh, but it doesn't talk about this and doesn't talk about that. No, it's all the founding fathers, the founding documents, and the founding basis of everything that we do.
Yeah. Like I say, before we do these things, we should take time. You know, we get these snippets in social media. Oh my God, I read about Columbus, he's bad. And, you know, my granddaughter went through that school system, and, you know, I ended up in another battle over there over DEIJ, right? But it's the same thing when she was coming home saying, I hate Columbus and I don't like being white anymore. I mean, I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, and
She
then
actually said that?
and to try to go get the curriculum to try to understand how a 10-year-old young girl
Is being taught these things.
taught these things. It just blew my mind. So that was another.
They're having those problems. Well, the problems are everywhere. We had it in Amherst over the genderqueer books, and et cetera, et cetera. And as a taxpayer, I always come back to money. As a taxpayer, where it is mandatory that you pay this amount of money, and it's mandatory that 80% of it goes to the schools, no ifs, ands, or buts, when you're going to do the DEIJ and you're going to do CES and you're going to do put genderqueer and all those books in there, you have to talk to the taxpayers. You have to talk to the citizens. This, you know, well, we're the school board and we're the this. I'm sorry, we elected you and you work for us. Again, this public servant definition has been totally flushed.
But who's failed us? It's not them. I don't begrudge them.
I do in a way.
Go to, where are the people? Think about it, you're spending 80% of your tax dollars is going to schools.
Yeah.
In curriculum. No one even asks what the curriculum is.
Correct.
If
Well,
you
some
can see
people
it.
do.
Okay.
Yeah.
The point of the matter is that you go to, what's that thing before they allocate the money? Each town is a little
deliberative.
Deliberative session. Who shows up? Nobody.
Unless there's something
but think about
big,
it.
they
It's a
don't.
school thing. You're spending 80% of your tax dollars, and they're kind of like, there's not much left. I mean, most of it's contractual stuff and everything. There's not
Correct.
much left to play with. I mean, it's happening. You know, we're on the deck. You know, we're rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic right now because
Correct.
we're running out of money, and kids are dropping out of school.
Correct.
And
the literacy rate is
and the literacy
in the
rate
toilet.
is dropping.
Yep.
I mean, this is not a very good scenario, especially for older people in New Hampshire, because your taxes are going to go out of control.
Correct. Well, I think they're well on their way.
But so we're coming to this, you know.
So again,
precipice.
people not showing up. But again, from previous discussions, you know, there's groups of us that show up, and the minute that they find out that we're there saying we don't want our tax money spent that way, we're not saying we don't want to educate the kids. We're not saying we're not willing to pay. But when you've got your hand in both our pockets and you're screaming at me this far from my face, I do have say in this.
But when a school board member or a legislator sits there and nobody shows up, right? They just say, well, they elected me. I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do what they elected me to do.
But when people do show up, and that's been on the increase for the last 5 years. There are parents showing up at school board meetings. There are people showing up at deliberative meetings going, wait a minute, I'm going to lose my house because you're out of control. They're immediately attacked. There is no civility and there's no respect. And that's what I'm observing, and it's very scary.
And I can understand why people don't want to be on the point of the spear. The point of the spear is not big, it's narrow. It's not made for everybody.
Nope.
Right? So some people can be there. But if you don't, what is the outcome? So a lot of, especially young people, want to be accepted, right? They want to be part of that clique and that group. And, you know, I coached hockey for a long time. Kids want to wear that uniform. They'll do anything to make the team, right? It's the same thing. Their kids are in the school and they're like, they go home and the mother reads the book and or the dad looks at the book and says, oh my God, we should go to school and discuss this. And then one of the other parents says, oh, we don't want to cause little Johnny or little, Jeannie any problems. We better just be quiet and sit down.
Be good little parents.
Right? The school board hopes that way. The educators hope that way. They know the power of that. And when you capitulate, you roll, then you fail.
Yep.
And then you
And
wonder,
who pays the most? The kids.
and
That you can't stop a questionable curriculum because you don't want your child to pay the penalty that a teacher or educator will take out on them because you said that's not appropriate. That's a book for 18 and over, which is what it came out to be. I was called every name under the book. Every name under the book, screamed and yelled at. People that weren't even in our town. They brought people from other towns in to scream and yell and talk. And I was like, do you pay taxes here?
Here's the one I love the
down.
most is banning books. I love that statement because, wait a minute, it's available at Barnes and Noble. Mm-hmm. It's available in the public library.
Right, the town library, yeah.
We just don't want it in the school library.
Because the author says it's not for under 18.
That's kind of reasonable. Mm-hmm. That's not a book burner. That's not a, no one's a revolutionist. No one's causing a revolution here. You have access to the books.
Wherever you want.
Wherever you want.
Yeah.
We're just saying it's not appropriate in a 13-year-old setting or a 15-year-old setting or whatever. It's not appropriate.
It's not appropriate.
But I sat there, I sit and watch these people, the school board saying, we're going to do this, and their mothers. Most of them are women.
Yep.
And they're mothers. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, can't you see your own children? Can't you see that it's not appropriate for your 13-year-old? You wouldn't have that in your home in most cases. Why do you allow it to be for somebody else?
Well, and who are you to decide for somebody else? If you want that in your house, buy it and put it in your house. But don't force my child to have to, if I don't want that there.
Yeah, no, it's...
But then that goes right to the public schools again, the government schools, and dictating what they're going to teach your kids.
Or what holidays you're going to celebrate. That's back where we are again. That's why
full circle.
Full circle. That's why it's so important that people stand up for these things.
Well, and understand what's behind it. I love that you brought the history of Columbus Day because I truly was not aware of that. I did not understand that came.
Yeah, no, it's pretty amazing.
It is. Well, it's when they take down the statues and everything as well. That's history.
Right, but nobody...
It's offensive.
I take offense to the newspaper because they should report how Columbus Day came about, not just they want to go against the individual. The news has not... We know the press, and sadly, I hope it will change. But with this conservative press, people, podcasters and things that are getting the word out, thank God.
Absolutely. Well, thank you once again for shining a light on what's going on in New Hampshire.
Thank you.
And, we all need to know this. We all need to have the discussions. We obviously are not always capable of having them at the school board meeting or at the classroom meeting or at the this and that meeting. We have to go back to the basics. I mean, there's a reason for that phrase. It has to do with education. It has to do with, state laws and everything. We've got to know if that's what it is, if that's truly what's in the Constitution, that's what we follow. If you don't like it, then everybody needs to get together and change it. But isn't that funny how they haven't?
No, but more important, and so important that people, if you don't start standing up for yourself, this steamroller is going to keep going. And I don't know how you look back at your children and said, I was afraid to go to school.
Right.
Because I
was afraid to say no.
I didn't want Johnny to get in trouble. You know?
Well, it comes down to, my dad used to say, one of the smallest words in the vocabulary, it's no, N-O. Learn to say it and stick behind it. And I don't see many people saying no. People I hang with do, but
yes,
not the general public. I have a lot of people.
Second that.
Yeah. A lot of people say no, but not no because it hurts my feelings or no because I don't like it. No, because in the Constitution it says blah, 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 blah.
Correct.
And this is the way it is. So once again, thank you. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you so much.
And we'll see you next time with the next latest story and have a full discussion on from both sides. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.